What is relevance? When first confronted with this assignment, I immediately asked the question, why is relevance important? Why must an architect need to feel relevant in order to measure his or her own success? And I think the answer is because the architect is obsessed with himself. Our designs, our ideas are always better than the next guy's, and we're inflated by our own egos. I'm no exception to this. I believe that a certain confidence is healthy in the world of design, and it's necessary to really stay on top of your game in a cutthroat industry. However, all too often I think that the architect references space and beauty and design as the holy grail of the profession. Everything we do is to create beautiful space. It's what we're trained to do, and it's what we desire by nature. However, I think this is possibly a poison that deteriorates the architect's image outside of the profession. To those, I guess, on the outside, we would be considered vain and probably blind to any sort of rationality or functionality of human necessity. Rarely do we hear architects speaking of people and their need. The individuals who will be the daily constituents of the architect's precious space. Is this space not designed for people? And if so, then why not use a humanitarian origin as a point of departure for our design? And I think the answer to that is relevance. There are two types of relevance in the world. The first is defined, in this case, by the architect or other architects. They sort of define the criteria for what makes each other relevant. The second type of relevance I would consider to be sort of a real-world architecture, or a real-world relevance, in which those outside of the architectural profession set the criteria for what makes a building or an architect or a design relevant or successful. This notion, I think, probably applies to a number of industries, certainly not limited just to design or architecture. And what is sad is that in the case of architecture, those that strive for the avenue of relevance in the real world will likely be considered sellouts to sort of the brotherhood of architects that they've joined when entering academia. It seems like we really ritualize and romanticize designs rather than really assessing their true functionality in the world outside of academia. And often those that pursue a humanitarian approach will be considered irrelevant. They will likely disappear from the architect's radar as they focus on specific niches and really enter the social realm. I've compiled the list of several names of people that have influenced my design and whom I feel to be relevant both in what I would call the real world and the world of architects. The first is Aldo van Eyck. Aldo van Eyck in his time rejected the idea of modernism and instead pursued a more humanist approach, designing very minimal playgrounds for the city, which in today's world of architecture would be considered extremely irrelevant. And he really focused on human interaction with his spaces. Peter Gluck is another individual who has devoted his practice almost entirely to social projects. He designs for middle and low income user groups and really tries to find new and inventive ways of making the construction industry more affordable to those that probably don't have a high budget. Kiernan Timberlake is another firm that I admire. They really experiment with how the building profession can be altered to become more efficient. They look to other industries for inspiration in what's working and what's not, and they really question our intention as architects in creating space. Cameron Sinclair is the last on the list, and he has devoted his life to pursuing humanist architecture all over the world. He doesn't care if he's relevant in the eyes of architects, but instead he chooses to focus his attention on people with great need and design for them. So in closing, I would say that architects who pursue the avenue of humanitarian design will likely be considered irrelevant by their peers. They'll be looked down upon and thought of as not being able to do anything else than design for the less privileged. They'll say that those individuals are irrelevant and cannot do anything else. I would say that that's okay. I think I would gladly forego being relevant in the world of other architects, so long as I remain relevant to those outside the profession and those that I am ultimately designing for. Thank you.